on the content map, is it correct that the structure and the way the content map would fit in with that is that it needs to be quite silo-based? I remember a few years ago, I read an interesting article by a guy called Bruce Clay, who also does SEO, and he talked about the concepts of you don't want a jar full of multicolored balls. You have to separate into the silos of each ball being a different color, and sort of, is that still relevant? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's absolutely relevant. They call it content silos. They call it content clusters. There are different terms to talk, or pillar contents. There are different terms to talk about basically the same concept. The concept is that you have one huge or very big article usually, which is like an in-depth. This is the central piece you want to rank.
Right.
And then you have like supporting articles that link to this content.
Welcome back to the Teach Traffic podcast with myself, Ilana Wexler. This is a show where we reveal the best tips, tricks and tactics to increasing your website traffic and then converting that traffic into leads and sales. We also discuss what's working right now in the ever-changing world of web marketing so you can apply it to your business. Ilana Wexler here with another episode of Teach Traffic. Welcome back to today's episode. Today we're shifting gears a little bit, and instead of talking about paid traffic strategies, and that's all the kind of stuff that I personally love, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about SEO. And I've interviewed an SEO expert, because I am by no means an SEO expert, to talk about really what does one need to do to be successful in SEO in the 2019, 2020 year range that we are in now, and what are some essential elements that you need on your website, etc. So I interview a guy called Gert, and Gert covers a lot of information that you can apply to your own business. So don't worry about taking notes. We've prepared some show notes for you, which are available at teachtraffic.com. So be sure to download those show notes, and it's like a summary of the episode so that you can apply it to your own business. And if you're wanting help with Google ads and Facebook ads and Google Analytics and all that kind of paid traffic stuff, you can check out our online community at teachtraffic.com/training, where I will personally help you get better results with your ad campaigns. And I also record audit videos that you can peer over my shoulder and watch me analyze and audit existing ad accounts that you can learn from and apply into your own ad accounts. Alrighty, so check it out and we'll get stuck in today's episode. Welcome to today's episode of Teach Traffic. Today I'm shifting gears a little bit and I'm talking about SEO, which is definitely not in my sphere of expertise. But I do think that the intersection of SEO and pay-per-click marketing is an interesting one. So I thought I would invite a guy called Gert Mellak on today's show. And I've known Gert online for some years. And so it's a real pleasure to actually talk to you in person, Gert. So welcome to today's show.
Thank you very much, Ilana. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on the show.
Before we sort of get stuck into the nitty-gritty of today's episode, I'm always interested in people's journey. I know I've certainly had an interesting journey and not a typical one. So do you want to spend maybe just 1 or 2 minutes telling us a little bit about who you are and how you got where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm originally from Austria in Europe, then moved to Spain about 10 years ago. And in Austria, I attended some sort of technical high school where I learned programming, all the technical stuff, fundamentals of IT, networks, etc. And basically at this time, this was at the age of 16, probably I thought writing code and programming would be my whole life. I didn't want to do anything else. But then over the years, I kind of found some sort of preference for language learning, and I then moved on studying translations and interpreting for English, Spanish, and German. And in this context, in order to improve my English, I spent a summer in New York City. which was around the year 2000, I believe. And there I literally discovered something called SEO on Craigslist. So I had to really Craigslist, because I was looking for a job. I liked New York City. I was really thinking about moving there and looking for jobs that might be a good fit. So I literally Googled SEO. I had no idea what this stood for. But at that time, I was already doing some web projects in order to earn some money apart from my studies. And SEO seemed to be a great addition, like an add-on service I could provide to my clients, because obviously there were more and more websites out there, and I wanted my websites to really rank on Google, right? Yep. So, basically I got stuck with SEO, more and more marketing, less and less programming. But I mean, I'm still doing some web development, more in the project management and key account management part of it. But obviously with tendencies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc. coming up, the technical background is really a big asset for me. And this paired with my language knowledges in English, German, and Spanish turned out to be very positive for international SEO projects.
Interesting. So you mentioned that was back in 2000. So here we are in 2019 at the time of this recording. That's 19 years in the SEO game. Is that right?
Absolutely. We've been through quite a few algorithm updates and huge changes, starting out from adding text just for the sake of having it on there, and maybe in white font color on white background just to hide it so that Google would pick it up.
Keyword stuffing, wasn't that called?
With keyword stuffing, it exactly. Times where people still thought, and it really never worked, but still thought about meta keywords. I mean, even 20 years ago, it didn't work, but people are still today very often insisting in adding meta keywords to their articles to make them rank. This did never work. But obviously we went through quite a few phases, quite a few search engines disappearing, Bing coming up, which now has like 20% in the States, I believe, in terms of market share. And Google obviously getting better and better through constant algorithm updates. So we've been seeing basically the whole SEO evolution right from its beginning.
Interesting. So before we kind of touch on how SEO has changed and sort of what it looks like now, can we just take a bit of a step back? And for our listeners who don't really have a basic understanding of the foundations of SEO, what would you say are the basics, and what are like a couple of things that if someone is, let's say, built a brand new website, what are some of the things that they need to have on their website to get the foundations right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question, because I always state like two main concepts, right? The first concept is that Google equals attention in the right moment. I'm sure you know this from the Google AdWords game. There is a difference between Facebook advertising and Google advertising, because on Google advertising, you're just in the right moment there with your offer, with your brand, with your marketing, with your message. While in Facebook, you kind of need to do pursue some tactics to see when might be the exact moment when someone might be ready to decide, or have some email marketing automation in place or something to keep them close to the brand, right?
In Google, I often say
basically.
Sorry, you go.
No, basically in Google, you're just there when they are ready to get informed about the topic, right? It's just the exact moment.
Yeah, I often say to business owners, Google search is such an amazing advertising opportunity. You're sliding your business card under the nose of someone at literally the instant that they have searched whatever it is you offer. And that's
exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like being on at an event, for example. You collect like 20, 50 business cards, and there is no way right now I would need someone who can organize a live event or has a sound equipment I need, or does video editing if I already have a video editor. but there might be a moment coming up where I don't have this business card anymore, and I'm going to do a search in Google, because then it's the moment when I'm ready to decide. And this is also the moment when I'm most receptive for any marketing messages that might be relevant at this time. So Google is just really for me, the king of the moment whenever this is, right?
Absolutely.
And then the second concept I think people need to understand is what Google really wants. We have this image of Google being the big evil guy, which they might be, I don't argue that, but we also need to see that Google really wants to serve their users. They need to serve their users so they come back. There have been many search engines disappearing in the last 19 years when I'm in this game. That did not manage to serve their users. They put too much advertising on there. They didn't have the quality of search results, etc. And Google is where they are because they have been doing the best job among all search engines in serving their users. So when I'm building a new website, I need to exactly understand who are my users and what are their needs, their pain points, what are they going to be searching for, and then afterwards build a website. 99% of people and agencies and web designers do it the other way around. They build a nice website, then see it doesn't rank, and then need an SEO to fix their stuff.
And that's kind of where I was going with my question, right? So if you were building a brand new website, you mentioned, you think about who the customer is, what do they need, what are their pain points. But how does that affect how you build the website? Because as I understand it, and as I said, I am no SEO expert, which is why you're here today, but my very, very basic understanding of SEO is that there's what's called on-page SEO, which is the build part of your website, the structure. So how does what you said of who they are and what they need affect the structure?
The structure is basically affected by an initial research you do about the market. So you might go into forums, you might use a huge variety of tools out there to see how people communicate, how people in your market do their own research, what vocabulary they use, what type of questions they ask, and what intentions they have when they go online and research about your product or service. Google is really big about this, what they call the search intent. So this is basically the reason why someone would open Google and execute a search query. And your site structure must take into account that there are different intentions. Some might be navigational, some might be informational, some might be transactional, which would mean they want to buy a product or purchase a service, while navigational would mean they just want to get informed about a certain topic. So this needs to be clarified. We usually do in SEO projects an initial keyword research, a little market research, keyword research, maybe do some test Google Ads campaigns to further find out how people are really searching and for different combinations of keywords or key terms, key topics, and then create what we call something like a content map, where we would map different keywords to different search intents and the content we want to put behind there, which would be, in our point of view, the best possible answer to what the users are looking for at this special moment. So if you have the funnel, for example, a general funnel in mind, you know that when in the awareness stage, they probably search for different things than just right before the conversion stage. So they might just search for some comparisons and pricing, etc., when they are about to convert, and maybe have very general questions and doubts about the product or service when they start to get into the stage of researching.
Okay, so if I can recap a little bit, just to be sure I understand this correctly, let's use an example, because often I find it easier to learn with an example. Say I've got a business where I'm a chiropractor. Okay, so obviously a very local type business, and as a chiropractor, I'm looking to get more patients and find people with back problems. So is this correct in my understanding that I would run some AdWords traffic and also keyword research to find the type of words and phrases that my target audience would be using. And
Exactly, words and phrases, but also concepts in general. So they might research about posture, about how to improve your posture in the office when you have a job where you're sitting 8 hours a day in front of a computer. And also maybe they might be researching about general health topics. So it's not only directly certain keywords, it's also a little bit the surrounding context and surrounding topics.
Okay. First of all, as an aside, I love the fact that you, as an SEO person, you do run Google ad traffic. So many times I come across business owners who do one or the other and not both. But as you and I both know, like they play in hand so tightly together. And anyway, that's probably another.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So we run Google ad traffic to find, I would imagine, the search volume and the intent-based nature of the target audience and the characteristics and kind of what's going on in their head. Keyword research tool, other tools as well. When we've got that information, as my understanding goes, you then map it through a content map and structure it in such a way that it makes sense. Is that correct?
Exactly. When it comes down to a local SEO project or a local service, geographically locally based service, we would probably also take into account the surrounding areas, there's authority, institutions, suburbs, etc., to really add this to the content, because for Google, for local projects, it's very important that you provide this local context. You get links. We might be talking about link building a little bit later. You might get links from local authorities or other local services, which would further enhance your positioning in your area.
Okay. Is it merely just okay just to, so with the chiropractor example, is it merely okay just to mention the suburb, let's say somewhere in the content, or does that mention of the location need to be in some other kind of form, be it a map or a headline, or so does that matter?
We really usually try to give Google multiple hints about the location of a service. So this is for, on one side, you have the Google My Business listing. So every local business, this is really a must-have. They must get registered as a Google My Business company, where they send you a letter to your home with a PIN code just to identify and confirm you're really at this physical address available. And then Google already knows basically where you are. But apart from this, very often regional phone numbers and links from other regional businesses mentioning your hometown once in a while in your content, in your blog, some maybe neighbor towns or other regions, other shops, stores, etc. All those are hints to Google that your geographic location is really relevant. There might be other businesses where this isn't the case at all. I don't know, online courses or whatever, for example, or our SEO business is really irrelevant of our client's location. But if you have a local business, you absolutely need to give Google a huge variety of clues where you are.
Okay. I've seen some websites that have tried to do that, I think, using pretty bad SEO techniques. And in the footer of their website, they had probably about 50 different suburbs stuffed in the footer.
Right. This is something that used to work. I mean, there are many things unfortunately used to work, right? It used to work that you were the car repair store in Sydney and the car repair store in Melbourne and the car repair store out of nowhere, just to get this traffic. And maybe you only have a store and car repair shop in Sydney, right? But you just grab the traffic from other sites, just in case there was a chance to maybe hand this lead over to some other car repair shop in their area, right? So people were madly grabbing content, duplicating pages, and just changing the city name or the city address, if anything. If you want to do this today, you really need relevant content to back it up, and ideally also a physical address. So if you want to rank for Melbourne and Sydney, you would probably have to have at least a virtual office or a virtual location, which you can register in Google My Business to really give some sort of proof at least that your business is really operating from that location as well.
Okay. So you mentioned the content map. On the content map, is it correct that the structure and the way the content map would fit in with that is that it needs to be quite silo based? I remember a few years ago I read an interesting article by a guy called Bruce Clay, who also does SEO, and he talked about the concepts of like, you don't want a jar full of multicolored balls. You have to separate into the silos of each ball being a different color, and sort of, is that still relevant? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's absolutely relevant. They call it content silos. They call it content clusters. There are different terms to talk, or pillar contents. There are different terms to talk about basically the same concept. The concept is that you have one huge or very big article usually, which is like an in-depth, this is the central piece you want to rank.
Right.
And then you have like supporting articles that link to this content. So you might, let's stay with a car repair shop, for example. You want to rank for car repair shop Sydney, and you would have surrounding articles talking about all kinds of car repair stuff you want to talk about, right? This could be car tuning, this could be painting cars, this could be, I don't know, different car brands in Sydney, etc. And every single one of those articles would link back to the car repair shop from a relevant context. So if you visualize this graphically, you have in the center, you have this main article, and then you would have smaller articles usually around the main one, but interlinked. So the main one would link to the smaller ones and vice versa. And this basically gives Google an idea of the structure and of the importance and the ranking within the page of the different articles.
Right. And the purpose of interlinking the smaller article pages to the pillar content is it boosts the ranking of the pillar content. Is that correct?
That's correct, but it also gives Google an idea of what's more important than the other one. What usually happens on many sites we do site audits with is that they want to keep pushing out content, which is great. But what happens if you have been writing for 8 years, and we have multiple clients who have been with me at least 8 years or more. When you have been writing about the same topic for 8 years, you kind of get repetitive, right? You probably can come up with new topics about paid search for a year, but then you probably will start repeating a little bit along the same lines, right? For Google, this is a really big problem because maybe within your page, they might have 20 or 30 articles which basically state the same thing.
Yes.
So how should Google really know what to rank? What would you like to rank among your pages? And so internal links can give a great hint about what's really important in which context.
Okay.
So just in terms of a structure, if there are many pages linking to one single page with the keyword car repair shop or car repairs or car shop or whatever terms as an anchor text, this might give Google a hint that among all your pages talking about basically the same thing, this is the most relevant one. And then there is another thing happening in this context, which is when you get a link from an external site, this site transmits what they used to call PageRank or link juice or ranking potential or whatever to your site, right? So this enters maybe on your homepage, and then the homepage via the internal links distributes this link juice among the internal pages. So depending on where you place the links and how you place them and how many of them you place at certain pages, you kind of can control up to a certain extent how this link juice is distributed and which page gets more of it and which page gets less of it. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does. And for some reason, I've got a visual of like a skeleton where, the head would be your homepage, but then connected to the head are the sub pages, and then off the sub pages are more sub pages, and that juice just sort of trickles through that way. Is that what?
Absolutely. I've just been studying the skeleton with my daughter.
Oh, no
We've got
way.
206 bones in our body. I didn't remember that one.
Yeah.
But basically, it's exactly like that. What's important in terms of websites is that you don't want to have too many layers. So meaning one page linking to the next, and the next linking to a third layer, and the third linking to a fourth layer, because then the page rank or link juice gets diluted quite a bit. So you might have a lot of articles you just push out through social media, and you never intended them to be ranking on Google. But those you want to rank on Google, you want to really check how you internally link to them and make sure it's not going across too many layers.
I see. And how do you decide then? So let's say you've got your pillar content, right?
Right?
And how do you, so, okay, you've got your pillar content, and let's say you've got like 3 to 5 keywords that are related to each other but somewhat different. How do you decide what keyword you should rank your pillar content for? Or is the idea, if you want to rank for 5 keywords, rather than focusing your 5 keywords into that one pillar content, you have 5 different pillar contents?
It depends on how related the keywords are. If they are kind of not related too much, I would probably go for 5 individual rankings.
Right.
But it really depends on maybe the market research, the search volume, the keyword research, the AdWords, Google Ads tests we did before, which would give us a hint on where to focus our attention. If I have I'm right now with a project of a language site, for example, where we implement conversion tracking just really for the sake of getting an idea about what pages lead to sign-ups for the newsletter. And this is basically the first step to know what topics and what keywords we might put most of our attention to. But many projects don't really know that. Many projects or many site owners know they get like 50, 100, 300 conversions in a period of time, but they don't know where they come from. So by the time you know where they come from, you're going to adjust your strategy. And if the 5 terms all bring in conversions, we can check where they are ranking right at a given time, and then draw out a plan on how to get those terms ranking individually, or if they are very related, we would probably try to rank them all on one page.
Okay. And the pages, the smaller pages that are linking to the main pillar content page, is there a minimum amount of length of the article or sort of words that those linking pages need to have, or it doesn't really matter?
It really only depends on the search intent, right? The search intent meaning what does this smaller article really give an answer to. If it's the height of the Eiffel Tower, I really don't need more than 80 words on this page, right? Mm-hmm. And it probably will come up in Google, which is also an interesting topic, Google giving more and more direct answers within their search results.
Yeah.
But with such a search intent, there's probably no need to write 2,000 words, because Google is going to see that the usability for just this answer is just not there and will not give you the benefit of it, right? So 80 words or 40 words would probably, together with an image, be enough for a smaller article. And then you might have topics where it really makes sense to elaborate them a little bit more, but it really comes down to what do you think users expect when they execute a certain search, and then write up the article. I mean, the most important tool for SEO we have, and it's probably the most underused, is Google itself. So if I want to rank for car repair shop in Sydney, the first thing I would do is execute a search for car repair shop in Sydney, right? And then see what comes up, because what's coming up is what Google thinks is the best guess.
However, though, if so, you're in Madrid and I'm in Sydney. If you search for car repair Sydney and I search for car repair Sydney in our different locations, the search results are going to be different. Or let's say in even on the other side of Sydney. Is that correct?
You can meanwhile, it used to be a bigger issue than it is today. You can meanwhile configure Google search in terms of language and location, so the results should be pretty similar.
Right.
We also use some tools to get IP addresses or localized IP addresses just to eliminate an additional difference that might exist. What always can be an issue is that your search history influences your search results. When you're logged in Google, Google knows what you have been searching for lately. And if you were searching a lot for, SEO in general, there might be some more SEO pages coming up you visited lately than for me, for example. But I can certainly adjust my search settings to your local environment to pretty much get a similar result.
Okay, interesting. One last question on the content side of things, and then we can move on to maybe the concept of links and stuff. Is there anything in particular that your content needs to have? Does it need to have bullet points? Does it need to have, H1 or H2 tags and all that kind of stuff? So I guess what are the essential, if you're creating content, be it pillar content or the inner page content, is there anything that content absolutely needs to have?
Basically, for me, what it needs to have is structure, right? We need to be aware of the fact that many users are not going to read it from the beginning to the end. They are just going to skim through it. And what they are looking for basically is for a confirmation to be on the right page. Otherwise, they can go back and click on another search result. So what you want to achieve is when someone opens your page, they need to find as quickly as possible enough information to get some sort of self-affirmation or confirmation that they have made the right choice clicking on this search result. And then they can go deeper and really read the first paragraph, the second paragraph, to get some additional confirmation they are still on the right page, right? What that means basically is that you want to have different paragraphs, you want to have lists, you want to have main keywords, main topics in each paragraph in bold letters, probably. You want to have some questions in there. You want to have the title, which should be inviting and incite them to really read the first paragraph at least. And then in terms of technical markup, as you were asking about the H1, H2, etc., this used to be a little bit more important. There was just a Google representative announcing a few weeks ago, I think, that they don't really care about the H1, but it still helps Google to find out what's the structure of the text. So in my point of view, and I've been talking about this with quite a few SEO professionals out there, I would still make sure there is one H1 indicating what the text is about, and then at least 2 or 3 H2 subtitles for different paragraphs on this page, because it's just also for the user the best way to find out where they can find the information they are looking for. And for Google, it kind of structures the whole thing and should help them indexing it. And then in terms of content, what's really the most important element, if you want to pick one, is probably the page title. This is not the title of the article, but the title that shows up in the browser tab. So this is in HTML, this is the title tag. And this is usually the best recommendation. Google might change this sometimes, but it's basically the recommendation for the title coming up in the search results. And this is very important because it influences the click-through rate you're getting. So there are quite a few tricks you can try to increase your click-through rate from the search results by basically adapting the title, make it a little bit long, a little bit shorter. Brackets work very well. The current year in brackets is like an eye catcher that might increase your click-through rate. So we have got quite a few things we can try there. also with the so-called meta description, the description that usually comes up also in the search result that basically should sell the click, not the product, but at least the click to the website and give just enough information for a user to want to find out more.
Yep. Cool. Okay. That is definitely very helpful. So the other component, as we both know, with ranking in Google is getting people to link to your website, otherwise known
Right.
as link building. I've heard bandied around the industry, oh, link building is dead and all this kind of stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts on link building, if it's still relevant now, and if so, what are some ways that, I guess sort of non-techie people can go about doing link building?
Right. Link building is by no means dead. There was an experiment, I think a few years ago, where Google thought, we are going to stop this link building just by removing links as a ranking factor altogether. And they had to admit there is no way to do this. Links are still something called some vote of confidence, right? It's like another site expressing their confidence and giving you some sort of authority in your field, right?
Yeah.
So site A linking to site B is telling everybody that site B is relevant for the topic in question. So links are important, and then we have to understand that not all links are created equal. There are better links and worse links, and there is also a certain kind of risk involved. So let's start with the differences in links. You want links from authority sites. So this means if there is a business association, if there is the town hall having their own website and you have a local business, town hall would probably be one of the best authority sites you can get. If you can contribute to a blog in your industry, this blog probably carries a certain authority in your niche and would transmit a part of this authority to your domain, to your blog, to your article you want to get ranking. Mm-hmm. So just think about who could be an authority in your niche. These are providers, your providers where you purchase your material, your raw material from. They might have websites, they might have a possibility to publish articles there or place a logo of their clients, which would carry a link to your site. And very often the main providers in an industry are authority sites themselves.
Okay, so as somebody who does SEO for other people, what are some ways in which you can, not everyone can get a link from their town hall, right? So what are some ways that you can get links to your site? Probably a whole episode on this, I'm sure, but maybe just like one or two strategies that people could use.
Yeah, absolutely. I would first really see what are the associations in my niche, what are business magazines, what are representative organizations, meetup groups, etc. in my niche that carry a certain relevance. We have some tools, basic tools like SEMrush, which is probably the main tool anybody doing anything with online marketing might want to look at, which can quickly give you an idea of who are the players in a certain niche that come up in the first, let's say, 5 to 10 pages of Google when you do a quick search, and see what could be an interesting aspect for them or an interesting reason for them to link to your site. Then you can look at your clients, for example. Your clients might have websites themselves, and if they are relevant, they might be happy to publish an article on their blog. We call this guest posting or guest blogging, which is still a very big topic in SEO, because it allows you to provide the context where a link comes in completely natural. Right.
So you mentioned SEMrush. So what's a way that you would use that tool? Do you want to maybe touch on that quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. SEMrush is just very quickly gives you an idea on who is playing in a certain niche, in a more important in the more important rankings. So you basically can put in a keyword there which is relevant for your niche and check out who is ranking, who is advertising, and this quickly gives you an idea of the most important sites. And then you can go a little bit deeper and click on one of those sites and see what keywords are bringing them the most traffic.
Oh,
and
I
this
understand.
basically gives you an additional idea on further sites that might be ranking for this term. So it goes a little bit across different levels, but you come up quickly with a list of probably 30, 50 pages that could be very interesting representatives or authorities in your niche that might be good link opportunities. And then another thing is really to reach out directly to bloggers in your field and see if they would be willing to either write something about your brand or present your product, or you send them a sample and they do something, some testing around this, or write something up, or you send them a prepared article, they adjust it a little bit to their style, and then you get it published. This is really a manual approach. It's probably in terms of time out of reach for smaller websites. This is more something we would do as an agency for our clients. But definitely, I mean, you probably know 3-5 blogs in your niche that could be pretty relevant. And it really doesn't cost anything to send them an email, introduce yourself, and see if there's some sort of collaboration possible.
How receptive do you find those people are? Obviously, it depends on the industry you're in, but are bloggers and people like that generally pretty receptive to have someone guest post or get them to link to you or something?
It depends. Some might publicly announce they are looking for contributors.
Right.
And they're more than happy to publish your content, because if you have a blog and you want to maintain it, you want to keep it current, there's quite a bit of work involved to come up with new content. So many are really appreciating external contributions, and others either directly don't respond or ask you for money, ask you for sometimes very important amounts of money just to get something published on their blog. And then it really comes down to your idea and your pitch of the content you want to publish there. If they really see great value for their audience in the article you want to publish on their site, they might be more than happy to get it published and give you the link as well.
Okay. I mentioned at the start of this episode how, you've been doing this for an amazing 19 years, which is quite an achievement. Well done. But how it's changed in those 19 years, and I would imagine it's a completely different landscape now. So can we just spend a couple of minutes touching on how the SEO landscape, like what it is looking like for business owners now, and maybe is it really, really difficult? Is it, how hard is it for business owners?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was definitely much easier like 10, 15 years ago. But at the same time, we have to admit that we didn't have the same tools, nor the same experience, nor the same strategies or tactics in place which we have today. I mean, in like 10, 15 years ago, when I started out with this, it was really all about keywords. Today we talk about entities, but then we really talked about keywords, which was individual words. We sometimes at some point figured out you have to have them on the page to get them ranking. And we got client calls about why they didn't rank for certain terms, which weren't even on their site. So we had to do quite some education in terms of what Google really can and can't do around the year 2000. Today they can do much more, but it was like a very scalable way. I remember, for example, someone calling me. They had like 8,000 websites built up for all kinds of different exact match domains, they call it. So like plumber or cheapest plumber Sydney.com, and the very, very cheapest plumber Sydney.com, and plumber for companies Sydney.com, etc. Wow. You know what I mean? So they had like really literally they sent me the list. It was like literally 8,000 domains. They had a whole group of editors writing up very, very quick and bad content just to justify that there was a site. And they had an advertising-based business model which really worked. So the funny thing is this was really working for them until in 2011 Panda came around. Panda was one of the very first quality-based algorithm updates of Google, where they completely fought against what they call thin content, or like basically useless articles, as I like to call them.
Yeah.
So we had just tons of websites around. They had like paragraphs about difficult topics, but they had maybe 100, 200 words explaining this topic, many times really copied and pasted or spinned articles where they just change a few words and basically reuse the same article, changing 3 words. So the Panda algorithm was really good for Google's quality, because it got rid of many of those content farms and agencies that wanted to do SEO as it was back then at scale.
Yeah.
So I mean, this company, I remember the phone call. This guy said, "Yeah, we've got 8,000 useless websites. I can purchase them for $5, $10, whatever amount I'm telling him is going to sell," because they basically ran out of business. They had to kick out like 20, 30 editors and SEOs, if you want to call them like that, because Panda really ended a lot of businesses, I believe. It was great for the SEO industry and great for recovery projects, etc. But basically Panda was the first thing that really ended low quality content at scale.
Yeah. 8,000 domains. I mean, that's $80,000 a year in domain renewals.
Yeah, absolutely. But their business model was advertising and impression based, and Google gave them the rankings and the impressions. So they didn't really care that nobody spent on this website more than a minute or two. They didn't care about it. It was just a very small, tiny website that was ranking for one term, and for each search generating 1 or 2 impressions. Wow. And this at scale was profitable enough to run their business. I mean, this is one example, but we've seen this on every local business website back then, where they had, like you mentioned earlier, the 20, 30 location-based pages, which were basically the same page. They just changed the name and the title to make it rank for different cities and different combinations. And this was also something where Panda was the first algorithm update that kind of broke this tendency or forced sites to be a little bit more creative.
Yeah, wow. I'm sure we've got lots of stories that we could share in the years that we've been in this industry. Cool. Alrighty. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate you coming on today's show.
Thank you.
Where can people find out more information about you and your agency, and how you could possibly help them if they need help with SEO?
Yeah, absolutely. The best would be to enter into my personal website, which is gertmellak.com. I'm going to spell it. My name is not the easiest in English. It's GertMellak.com. Mm-hmm. And there you basically find out about my SEO consulting service, where as an external consultant, I try to kind of guide marketing departments or site owners directly on their path through SEO, and also advise them on what could be a possible link building strategy, do site audits, etc.
Yeah, I would imagine a site audit would probably be really useful before someone embarks on doing link building. I would imagine that would be the first port of call.
Absolutely. It's the first starting point.
Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for coming on today's show. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day or evening. I think it is for you right now.
It's the evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I've been listening to your podcast for quite a while and looking forward to the next episodes about paid traffic. There are tons of connections between SEO and paid strategies, so I'm learning quite a bit, and awesome. It was really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Alrighty, I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Teach Traffic podcast. For more information on each of these episodes and handy PDFs that you can download, head on over to teachtraffic.com.